Welcome to SatNuts, the podcast. I'm your host, Drew Klein, VP of SATCOM Satellite Systems. What is a SatNut? SatNuts are the shrewd, engaging characters from the space and SATCOM business. Yes, they do exist. This podcast is where we discuss past decisions, current markets, and future endeavors. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Datadrill Communications. Datadrill Communications has been providing custom secure IT and communication solutions since 1999, with a heavy focus on the oil and gas industry. Headquartered in Calgary and with service centers in Alberta, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and Texas, the company's service-oriented business provides robust communications to the most remote and the most harsh locations. Using top-of-the-line equipment and with the highest quality support, the company works closely with its clients to provide customized solutions to fit their specific requirements. Datadrill is a market leader in assuring connectivity for any field operator throughout North America. Visit the company's website at www.datadrill.ca. That's www.datadrill.ca. This is episode 00006. Today's guest, Dario Facca, President of Datadrill Communications. Finally, we're going to get to hear from a good old Canadian boy about the oil and gas markets from the point of view of an actual oil and gas rig head. Dario may be in the C-suite right now, but he never forgets what life was like back in the bush. With the energy markets in a seesaw frenzy and with the SATCOM markets in a likewise turbulent period, hell, what isn't being shaken up these days? I figured Dario is one of the best people in the energy cum SATCOM markets to give us some insight into what's going on in the Canadian oil sands, where the overall market is going, how SATCOM plays a big role in the energy markets. Who knows, maybe he'll tell you about how he bulged the twine playing hockey in his local Hoser House League. Bit of Canadian humor there. Dario's been a long-time customer and Datadrill has been a long-time SATCOM partner. It was awesome to chat with him on the podcast. Please welcome Dario Facca. Dario, welcome to the Datadrill episode. Dario Facca or Facca?
Facca. In Italy, they actually say faccia.
I'm thinking Dr. Fauci, and I'm looking Dario, but it's Facca, right?
Yep, Facca, Facca.
Is it a long A?
Facca. So think about it this way. My wife, literally, her friends call her Mother Facca. That's how you'll remember.
Perfect. It's good to have you here. The news in Ottawa today is that they're supposed to open golf courses in Ontario. I'm really excited for that. I know you're a big golfer. Are the golf courses open in Alberta? Have you been out there hacking? What's going on?
They are. They've been opened. The one I belong to is a private club, and they've just doing members only. Changed the tee times from an 8-minute gap to a 10-minute gap. Everyone gets a cart. Separate carts for separate households. My son's a member there, junior, so it's cheap to have him. He's 10. He's getting close to whipping me. But booking a tee time's been a challenge. They actually had their servers. I guess they use a system out in Ontario actually, and it crashed the other day. So,
everybody wants to be outside. I mean,
you bet.
Can you blame them? And the weather's turning, and sunshine is the best disinfectant. And who wants to go out there and have a beer or two and play some golf? It sounds like heaven to me.
Yeah, and so I actually managed to get a tee time. Thank goodness, for tomorrow. It's a little later in the day, but got the green light from the home boss, as I would call her. And so my son and I are going to go out there and try and get in 18, but for sure we'll get in 9 and see how the sunlight holds up and how the pace of play goes. But looking forward to it. So
on your recommendation, I actually watched the first hour of Planet of the Humans. It's on YouTube and Netflix, the documentary, the Michael Moore climate, more of an environmentalist type documentary, and it actually was. I was expecting it was going to be just a typical, anti big oil.
Michael Moore type film.
Yeah, like a Michael Moore. I mean, I like some of his movies for sure, and I have an idea of which side he belongs to on which side of the fence. But it was actually very contrarian in many ways. It was the opposite of what you hear from your typical mainstream media, your left-leaning environmentalists. So do you see the alternative fuels catching on, especially now that we've seen the price of oil move so much lower?
So It's funny, like, I had that conversation with a couple different people that aren't in the industry. One of my friends being a home builder, and he was saying how he was going to invest a ton of his retirement and whatnot into renewables. And, I warned him on doing so because just from a market perspective, tomorrow, if you were going to build two factories side by side, and you could heat one of them on your wind power and your solar power, so you build all this infrastructure out, but then you could heat it with natural gas, and you could use natural gas as a cogen, and you could burn it, and use a cogen facility. Who's going to win out if all your other inputs are equal? Well, the guy running his natural gas, because it's so cheap. And when you watch that movie, I mean, it really goes to show that generating wind, through turbines, generating electricity, or solar power really isn't that efficient yet. The movie really gets down to the crux of it, that we as humans are consuming more and more, and maybe we should lay off, which I can't really argue that. There's a lot of merit to that. But I think people are getting simpler over time now anyhow. I think they don't need the bigger house. People are valuing, and maybe it's part of COVID, but I think we're headed this way anyhow. People are valuing their health. They're valuing spending time with people, just simple family dinners, that kind of stuff.
I mean, I want an electric car. I want an electric house, solar powered house, because I know that it's going to be very inexpensive, if not free, to heat my home, to travel places. I want that. Of course I do. We're just not there yet.
Oil and gas has turned the corner in terms of technology. And there's more and more companies investing in clean technology within the sector. There's more and more companies asking service companies like myself, what can we do to help them move in that direction? There is a conscious effort there. And I think the media has been really hard on the oil and gas sector. And the oil and gas sector has long been just plow forward because it's a pioneer type of system, a risk reward system, and a lot of money hasn't been spent on lobbying because people felt, why do we need to lobby? And it's now biting the sector in the butt, and they're now starting to lobby and show the importance. I mean, it goes to show over time, any country that has access to cheap energy starts to prosper. They get out of poverty. That allows them to buy things like internet. So I'm a true believer in what oil and gas has to offer. I also understand the implications of the environment, but I think as a whole, it's gotten better and better. And there are lots of technologies for burning cleaner and cleaner all the time.
What we've seen lately in the oil and gas market, extreme price pressure, the result of simultaneous demand and supply shocks. We've never seen anything like this. The old commodity trader in me, has been fascinated by what's gone on. We predicted it in the first show. We would see $5 to $10 a barrel oil, and this was when the price of oil was trading at $30. What actually ended up happening was an unprecedented negative $40 per barrel oil for May delivery. Since you're in the industry and you probably know more than the average layman about that, can you explain how the lifeblood of our economy can go to a negative $40 a barrel price, which means that the seller of the oil was selling you the oil and actually giving you $40 to take it off his hands? Can you explain that for a layman?
You said it. You had so many things coming together all at once. Oil market has in Canada is completely different than the U.S. The U.S. Really took off, and that was largely due to Trump and his policies. And in Canada, it's gone completely the other way, and that's due to Trudeau and his policies. So, you need a large investment, it's large capital to do this. When you have COVID hit and everyone goes home and the cruise ships aren't running and the planes aren't flying, the demand for oil crashes. At the same time, you have the Saudis and the Russians prior to that trying to kill the American market. That all comes together, and what it does is create a downward spiral. And then, that product is still coming out of the ground. And some of these wells and some of these projects are hard to shut in. And some of them, when you shut them in, you can't bring them back online the way they were before. So you run a risk of, killing a well essentially. And some stuff they're able to shut in and they'll be able to recover when prices recover. So there has been a lot of that up in Canada. I don't know what's happening on the US side of the market, but we do have a lot of our customers that are shutting in a lot of their production.
I heard that gas wells as opposed to oil wells. Gas wells were easier to shut down, but oil wells you can't shut down. Is that just for the reasons you described there? That you can't stop them, but natural gas you can. Is that correct?
Yeah, and some of that has to do with, I'll give you an example, like some SAGD wells up in Fort McMurray. So instead of just drilling down and expecting the oil to fly out of the ground, they pump a lot of hot steam down there. It's called SAGD, steam assisted gravity drainage, I believe. Anyways, what happens is when you pump all that hot steam down there, it gets the bitumen, the hard oil, to basically liquidize and they're able to get it to surface. So you can imagine all of a sudden you take the steam out and everything hardens, right? Now, how do you get that steam back into there? Because now you're hitting basically, a brick wall again. So these are up to the geologists and the engineers to figure out what they can shut in and what they can't. But when you have so much of this coming to market and there's only so much storage, tanks, you can't build tanks fast enough. And, people are now, what they're doing is getting these oil tankers and pumping oil onto them and letting it sit at sea, right? And waiting for the price to recover so that they can then push this to market. But when you have a worldwide demand drop, China's not at work anymore manufacturing because people are in the US are staying at home and not spending as much, and it's snowballed. And there are people that I've read that are saying by the end of 2020 oil's going to be at $100. Now, do I believe that? That's hard to believe. If it does, great for us in the industry.
Datadrill Communications is based in Calgary. Calgary is Canada's Houston. Alberta is our Texas. It's our Baku, Azerbaijan, whatever you want to call it. It's our oil and gas heartland. It's a critical part of our economic engine in this country. The city itself, I guess the province itself, has undergone, a number of oil price shocks in the last, say, few generations. Can you describe the feeling in the city? Is this time different? Does it feel like this is going to be much more dramatic than previous oil shocks?
I'll talk first a bit about it. It's nice to hear a guy from out east talk positively and understand the economic engine. And I guess that's a bit from your background. And you also get, we buy product from you, so you understand how we buy product from you is a derivative of the demand that we see. So, I started DD in 99. I believe I was a summer student in the Patch in 95. Talking to guys that were around in the 80s, even prior to COVID, they were saying this has been the worst since 2014, 15. This has been the worst downturn and the worst experience in oil and gas in their career. These are guys that went through the 80s, lived through the 80s. Speaking to them now, they're they're just dumbfounded. A lot of these guys are now saying, okay, well, I'm retired now, because they're basically forced out of the game because it's a numbers thing, and because they're older, experienced, they're higher paid, that kind of thing. I'm even seeing guys that are, in their, early 60 retiring. They're like, I'm done. I won't deal with this anymore. I'm selling my house, everything I have, and I'm moving Scottsdale, Palm Springs, the Shuswap, Lake Okanagan out that way, or it's Costa Rica. It's almost like they're giving up. They're just tired of, fighting the battle of the dirty oil.
I just feel like you guys are totally unappreciated. And what I thought, at least in terms of federally, what we would see is that the federal government in Canada is, when it's liberal as it is today, it tends to be very unforgiving to the oil and gas industry, and has been, no pipeline building and all these regulations that really stifle your business and your progress. What I was thinking they were gonna do as kind of like their final salvo, like we've kind of screwed with you guys for years and years and years, but we're gonna bail you out now because of this COVID. Do you see any chance of a federal or provincial bailout for Alberta Oil?
I don't see it as long as Trudeau's in. That's my opinion. I don't necessarily see that you need to have a switch to a right-wing government. I just don't think he grasps the financial impact of it, and it's going to be too late by the time he does. And people out here love to work. People out here are hardworking people. Our business runs 24/7. I got guys that are on the phone till 2, 3 in the morning, and I've been there, done that. And even during this downturn, we went through, I think it was 2016, 17. I mean, I hopped on the phones again to help out some of my guys in our satellite network operations center, ironically enough. And, I was up till 2, 3 in the morning helping customers, so on and so forth. But, people out here, they don't want a bucket of money. They want, okay, let's do something smart. And, I forget who first proposed this, but the energy corridor seemed to be a great solution, right? You can run fiber down there, so then you can get better internet to different communities. And yeah, that chews into a bit of our business, I guess, Drew. But there will be other markets for us. You guys are building that phased array antenna. I think that's a new market that we can talk about later that I think is going to be excellent. But why not build an energy corridor that has natural gas, oil, and broadband internet going up and down it from east to west? And we can feed off of it as Canadians, but we can also get our product out east to market and out west and get it over to Asia to market. And it benefits everyone. And you build the pipelines properly. You build them so there's, you have satellite feeds on them, so that, or internet feeds or whatever you need to have satellite backup, so that you can visually see these things with cameras. You can monitor. We have the technology, right? The AI to monitor these pipelines. Just build the best darn pipeline and then get everyone to work. And that is my only hope for the federal government, even under Trudeau, might be pressured enough that to get the economy going again, they need to put people to work. And you can only build so many roads and bridges. But at some point, it's going to be, okay, let's build some pipelines, because that's going to employ a lot of people. We don't need to go north-south anymore. We can go east-west and make it a federal thing. Make it, and let's get the natives involved. They want to get involved. Let's make it prosperous for them, and let's get broadband internet to their communities. Let's get oil and gas to their communities.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by SATCOM Satellite Systems. SATCOM is a pioneer and world leader in the mobile auto-pointing satellite antenna business. The company has sold more than 9,000 systems into over 100 countries. The product line includes vehicle-mounted driveaways, transportable case-based flyaways, backpack man-pack antennas, and fixed motorized products. All come with SATCOM's proprietary iNet View controller system, which enables users to find broadband via satellite with just the push of a button. SATCOM is also in late-stage development, partnered with the University of Waterloo, of a revolutionary Ka-band electronically steerable phased array antenna technology that has the potential to forever change the antenna business. The company is publicly traded on the Canadian Venture Exchange under the symbol CMI and on the US OTC under the symbol CYSNF. Visit the website at www.c-comsat.com. That's www.c-comsat.com. Let's switch gears just for a second. Yeah. So Datadrill has been in the oil and gas business, in the oil and gas SATCOM now for at least a generation. You and your dad started the company about 20 years ago. Even people who are in the SATCOM business, they wonder often how oil and gas companies are using our solution. They don't know. They don't know about real-time operation centers and soil density data and all this stuff. They don't know. Can you explain how your company uses satellite technology and the importance of satellite communications in the oil and gas exploration and production business?
We do a large focus on data and what's important. Everyone's getting their data. And we found over the years what's happened is data used to be, or a connection in the patch used to be sacred and tough to get. And if you could get a connection for them, it was the be all to end all. And now it's become, they expect it to work just like their cell phone does at home. The expectations are, I should be able to have broadband in the middle of nowhere and it should be cheap. And that's just not the case. For drilling and completions, like drilling, for them, it's the drilling data getting back to town. And for the guys in town to be able to see that data real time and work with the team that's out on site to make decisions. There's also, and when I say drilling data, there's so much to it. There's, the rate of penetration. So how fast are they drilling? The amount of mud, what type of mud they're using, which is the drilling fluid to keep the hole lubricated, to keep it from closing in, to keep the pressures down so that gas doesn't come to surface and basically create an explosion. So there's so much data going on site, and then there's multiple users on site for that data. So there's the person that represents the company. They're usually a consultant, and 99% of the time they're a consultant, but they'll work for the oil and gas customer, but sitting beside them could be the geologist, could be a directional driller. So these wells nowadays, they're not just going straight down, they're going down, and then they spout off horizontally. They're not just going vertically, they go horizontally for kilometers at a time. Well, you need specialist equipment and specialist people. So, and the tools are feeding back all this data, so they need to see where that well's going, where they're drilling, if they're getting into the zone, missing the zone that they're supposed to drill to according to the engineered specs. And the engineer back in town needs to see, are they on track, all that. So everything's happening in real time and happening so fast because these rigs cost so much and the people cost so much. It's whether it's $100, $200, $300, $500,000 a day, that's big money. So if you can drill a well a day quicker, you just saved your company $200,000 or $300,000, right? So time is money, and having that data real time and being able to make those decisions, and not just seeing the data, Drew, but being able to call the rig, right? So, we put the phone system on the rig so they can call. Sometimes it's over cellular if we can bring it in. But they still run the SAT dish side by side, and they have it as a backup. And lots of rigs can't get cellular and it can't be consistent. So we do the voice over IP over the SAT, and they can call the rig, and the rig can call to town and make those decisions. And it's a very expensive business, and it's capital intensive. And I heard a guy on a podcast recently say they're in the business of what do they say, missing wells, is kind of, so they're mitigating the risk as much as possible, so that when they do hit a well that's going to produce for them, it covers all the times that they hit a duster.
Yeah, I don't think people really fully appreciate the work that especially the guys in the field are doing. And you
Right.
guys are very instrumental part of it. We can't forget how important communications are to any business. Just try to imagine doing whatever business you're in. Try to do it without comms. It's try to live your life without comms. It's become food, water, and my fucking iPhone. That's
Yeah.
what you pretty much need, right? So
And that's what we're providing in the middle of nowhere. If you really want to get it down to base, that's what we're providing. And some of these guys, they just want to be able to FaceTime their wife back home.
For,
So quality of life is sometimes that's what it's about.
no doubt, no
That's
doubt.
part of the equation for what we provide as well. It's not just business.
We saw in the last few months, we've seen satellite operators, LeoSat, OneWeb go bankrupt. We've seen Speedcast, they were the world's largest satellite service provider, bankrupt. Just last week, we saw Phasor, which is working on an electronically steerable antenna, much like SATCOM, they're gone too. Today, Intelsat. I mean, what's going on in our business? Is there a future for SATCOM in the oil and gas market, or do you see it kind of being whittled away here?
I'd see a future, because I think what you're seeing is they're going to have to develop other areas that are going to be more remote, and you also need that dedicated bandwidth. You need that consistency. So you cannot have real-time streaming data over cellular even today. It's still, cellular. The networks, the way they're run, are consumer grade, right? They've just set up a tower and let everyone attach to it. There is no QoS, there is no CIR, there is no mechanism to make sure your data gets from A to Z. And so I believe there'll always be a place for satellite. I think there's just going to be a mix now. So, we've got an SD-WAN solution that is, we're doing a bunch of testing on. We're trying to get there where it's not one or the other; they're kind of combined. And the big challenge there is the latency differential between a KU band system and a cellular system. Making those things marry up is a challenge, but we're getting there. So that'll be a neat solution for us. I think with the development of antennas like what you guys are working on, and this is the first I heard Phasor went under. I don't follow them at all. We're kind of waiting on guys like SATCOM to develop their product, and eventually go from a KA to a KU system on the phased array side. But I see that opening up a large market, right? So I'll give you an example. I mean, we used to rent, when Datadrill started, we used to rent fax machines, for God's sakes. And that's guys would literally write handwritten reports and then they'd fax them into town. And we no longer rent fax machines, but we rent other pieces of equipment like a auto acquisition satellite dish to get your data to and from town. So I think, as technology changes, we change with it. And we are an integrator, and we don't just say, here's your satellite dish, deal with it. We go out there, set it up, we teach people how to use it, and we explain to the customer the benefits of satellite versus cellular and why it's important. And they understand that they need their data real time. And some of them try and get away with cellular, and then they, realize that that doesn't work for them, and then they switch to satellite. So I don't see it going away at all. I see it growing. I think we've almost hit the bottom here. But in terms of the market overall, I think you're going to see more of it as everything needs to be connected 24/7. What has to happen is the market in oil and gas needs to pick up so that the profitability is there for them to change out some of the old infrastructure. If you get a flat panel antenna, you can start doing all kinds of things, right? You can start tracking vehicles now. You can track equipment, high end equipment that you could track before from an asset management perspective, but you couldn't track a lot of the analytics on it in real time. I think there's a lot that can still be done. It's just no one has the money right now to spend it, right?
So you,
Whether it's a drilling contractor, they don't have the money to spend on technology that's going to help their business because they're getting squeezed by the oil and gas producer on pricing. And oil and gas, they don't have the money to spend on more expensive services that are going to give them better value.
how do you value, or how does your customer value the total cost of ownership for these types of large, commercial purchases? Do they sacrifice the quality for the price in many cases, especially in a time when communications, as we know, is so important? Like, you cannot be down on an oil rig. I heard that for every day that you're down, I forget, it was Bill Green, I think, from Speedcast once said, for every day that an oil rig or an oil facility is down in terms of comms, they're losing, several, maybe $500,000-600,000 per day.
Yeah.
I don't know what the number is, but there's some significant number. So
It depends on the size of the rig and the operation. The offshores are going to be the most expensive, and then on the onshore, a big triple is going to be ridiculously expensive. And then, so people that don't understand, a triple means that you can fit 3 9-meter strands of pipe in at one time. Double means you fit 2 strands of that pipe because you connect the pipe, and a single means you can only put one stand up in the derrick. So when you're driving down the road and you see a rig and it looks like a small rig, it's probably a single. If it looks like a monster, that's probably a triple. What's happening out here is that everyone is trying to save on everything and anything. It's down to the point where, even in offices, it was like, shut off the coffee machine because the coffee bill every month is costing us. I know
Right.
it sounds crazy, but those are the extremes that things have gotten to here. And it starts eating away at everything, right? So it starts eating your decision-making process, right? So now you're doing the old proverbial, trip over a dollar to save a dime kind of thing, right? And I'm not
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying everyone's like that. We're quite fortunate that the customers that we have are larger cap customers. We're working with them. We're quote unquote sharing in the pain. My whole job since COVID hit was in my home office every day talking to our customers, whether I was engaging them or they were calling us looking for help. And then the proverbial shit flows downhill. So then it switches from me and my guys then talking to our suppliers and asking how we can work with them and how they can do things with us. And we've had some really good candid conversations, but they're tough too, dealing with,
Mm-hmm.
even looking at satellite space, that's one example. We had to talk to our the guys we acquire our space from, and those conversations were tough. But we worked through it, and we're on the other side of it. And I think if you both come out of a deal and you're both really not the happiest, then it's probably a good deal for both of you.
It's such a mess what's going on right now. I really, have you found any like positive things that have come from the COVID? Like, personally, I have quit smoking. I haven't smoked in 3 months. Eating really well, exercising more than I ever have before. Have you seen any positives that have come from this?
Oh, sure. Like, same thing here. I've always been pretty good with working out and staying healthy and eating healthy. We've just kicked it up a notch. One thing I would recommend is look into a Peloton bike.
To me, it seems it's too much, man. It's like three
It
thousand bucks and $60 a month. It's insane. I just can't bring myself to
Okay.
do that.
Now they have 0% interest to pay the bike off though. I get on the Peloton, I ride that. I also lift weights. I used to, when COVID wasn't around, I would go to a Muay Thai instructor, Team Smandich training here in Calgary. Trevor and his brother Nate, I believe Trev was the world champ for 2 years. He's Canadian champ a bunch of years. It helps build confidence. It helps build resilience. It makes you tougher physically, mentally.
Your wife, like my wife, has learned to bake bread, which is
Yeah.
terrible. It's like the worst possible thing that she could have done was to start making this fabulous, chewy, beautiful bread. So like I'm shooting gluten all day now. I got giant pieces of bread covered in butter. It's a positive,
Yeah,
but it's a negative at the
but
same time.
I hear, and what I've read on sourdough, it's actually not that bad for you because the way it's made and the cultures and whatnot. Now, I'm going to stick with that story so I can continue to eat it, but I just throw in another 20 minutes on the bike or do what I got to do to kind of counteract it. And
Don't you miss sports on television? I mean, they couldn't have done
chilling.
I saw a great picture the other day of a tree, a giant tree that was just on fire. And underneath it says, I set this tree on fire just so I could see the flames destroy the leaves.
Right, of course.
So good.
Stuck in Ottawa.
Yeah, I mean, this was the best thing for our hockey team. COVID was great for the Sens.
Yeah.
But it's terrible for the Leafs, so that makes me really happy too.
Yeah.
But
so have you followed the Sens for quite a while then? Are you a big fan?
Well, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan, yeah.
So one of my very close friends is Brian McGrattan. You would remember him as the guy that came into the league and beat up Ty Domi, and that's.
I was gonna say he was a goon.
So that night, the story goes, he had a letter. So they got those basically mailboxes, right? They're open slotted, I guess. But he walks by and sees something in his. So he's like, "Oh, not sure if I'm cut or what's going on." Opens it, and it was a letter from the owner, basically saying, "Go buy a condo. You just made the team," or something to that effect. Him and his wife do a lot of charity events and stuff too. So
he's a local boy, a Calgary boy.
Him and his wife are from Hamilton, but they live here now, have a house. They have a young son there who Angelo and him get along famously, and that's been tough too during the COVID thing, right? Like we used to have our crib matches after a big meal at my house or at his house, and now it's we're playing crib online.
Yeah, I've been walking like 10 kilometers a day. I just get in my car and I go to a new neighborhood. I just walk the neighborhood until my feet bleed, and it's been great. Like I know it's not a hard workout. I'm throwing in a few sprints and stuff here and there. I did a Muay Thai class. It was fun. I just couldn't see myself going 3 or 4 times a week. I enjoyed it. I had a good time. My buddy and I, like, you partner up, I guess, and he was just, you were doing just crunches, and every time you went up for a crunch, you got hit with a bag, like in your chest.
Yeah, we do
and
those.
The next day, and for the next week, my body was like mush. I felt like I had been, I never felt it wouldn't go away. It was like 4 or 5 days. I'm like, I'm still hurting from this. I'm such a wimp. Dario Facca. Facca? Okay, Dario Facca. Dr. Fauci. We'll just call you Dr. Fauci.
No, don't do that. Holy Christ.
That guy's under a lot of pressure. All right, man. Nice to chat with you.
Great chatting with you. And next time you come out to Calgary, I'm going to throw a pair of gloves on you and we're going to go to the Muay Thai gym. And we won't spar. I promise you that. I don't spar friends because never ends well for either party. But we will we'll get a workout in that will be life-changing for you.
Are you 6'2"? You're still 6'2", 290? Because I'm 6'2", 270.
Yeah, so there we go. We're right. Yeah. We could go at it, I guess. But after that workout, I promise you, we'll go for a nice cheat meal. How's that sound?
100%. Every meal is a cheat meal for me.
I love it.
All right, man. Nice to chat with you.
Take care, buddy. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. See ya. Subscribe to SatNuts, the podcast. Also, rate and review on Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud, and anywhere fine podcasts are downloaded for free. Audio engineering provided by Ben Klein. Music provided by Bacon Jew. Special thanks to the entire SATCOM staff. Stay nuts, everybody.